We had no closed session tonight, so there's nothing to report, and we will go ahead and move to Pledge of Allegiance. Please join me. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, we'll give it just a second, and then we will move to a roll call. All right, roll call, please.
Councilmember Ackerman.
Present.
And Councilmember Lohman.
Here.
Councilmember Chu.
Here.
And Mayor Pro Tem Mendoza.
Present.
Mayor Bruce.
Present. All right, moving to item 2E, approval of the agenda order. We do have one item that we are removing from the agenda tonight. That is item 9A, and that will be pushed to the next meeting. So can I get a motion to approve the agenda order with the exception of item 9A? Move to approve.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mayor Pro Tem Mendoza.
Oh, yes.
Councilmember Ackerman.
Aye.
And Councilmember Chu.
Aye.
Councilmember Lohman.
Aye.
Mayor Bruce.
Aye. All right, moving to the consent calendar. Matters on the consent calendar are routine in nature and will be approved by one blanket motion by a council vote. No discussion on these items ensues unless a specific item is pulled for discussion and separate action. If you wish to have an item pulled from the consent agenda for discussion, please notify me now. Do we have anyone who'd like to pull an item from the consent calendar? Seeing none, can I get a motion to approve the consent calendar?
So moved.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Fitzgerald.
Aye.
And Mayor Pro Tem Mendoza.
Aye.
Councilmember Ackerman.
Aye.
Councilmember Lohman.
Aye.
And Mayor Bruce.
Aye. All right, moving to item 4, agency report, starting with Placer County Sheriff's Department.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Sergeant Kevin Griffiths, Placer County Sheriff's Office. Chris Nave with the California Highway Patrol. Since last meeting, sorry I wasn't here. I don't know if everybody knows, I go to LA once a month for a leadership class the Sheriff's Office is sending me to. I've got 4 more months left of that. So I'll make every meeting that I can up until that. But as you saw last week, I was able to jump on the Zoom meeting, listen to the meeting, and then provide a little bit of input. I hope that helped out. Tonight, based on a couple of weeks ago, there's not a lot to report from the Sheriff's Office. I'll have the stats and everything next month at the beginning of the month. So without that, unless there's any other questions, that way we can get on to the next topic. I'll leave it with that.
Do you have any questions? Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, CHP.
Good evening, Officer Chris Nave, California Highway Patrol, Gold Run area. I just pulled up some stats I thought would be interesting to share with you guys in going on with what we faced last year and such. So just the motor fatalities in our county and our state have gone way up. Just take these off, I can't see. 2021, just some stats for you. Dangerous 12-month stretch. We saw traffic deaths jump 30% statewide. That's twice the statewide rate over the same 12-month period since 2015. Speeding and reckless driving are determined to be the primary causes of that, along with, according to the U.S. Center for Disease Control and Prevention, drug abuse and alcohol abuse is increasing as well. And that is considered to be a contributing factor in the rise of the deadly wrecks. Our DUIs are up. DUI, drug, and alcohol, they're both up. Sacramento County DA related, there's a significant increase in the number of vehicle manslaughter cases in which we're talking about DUI fatalities. From 2017 to 2020, Sacramento prosecutors filed 9 to 12 DUI vehicle and gross vehicle manslaughter cases each year. In 2021, that number rose to 27. Of those, 16 were filed gross vehicle manslaughter while intoxicated when the driver or passenger of the vehicle was struck or was killed. It's nearly 3 times the number of cases that we've had in the previous 4 years. So as I mentioned last time, I just want to give some stats because I talked last time I was here about things are increasing. So, and then obviously we had yesterday and the day before, the freeway just fell apart. We had 2 patrol vehicles that were hit. Yesterday, there was a minimum, at least 30 crashes between Colfax and Kingvale. That's just our area alone. We had the freeway shut down multiple times. And it was all due to spin outs and crashes, jackneck big rigs, and it was very spotty weather. I mean, it was dumping snow in Auburn and the sun was shining in Gold Run, and then it would flip flop. And once one little drop of water hits the road, we all have to crash. So I think that's a rule. So, but we did try to get the freeway open as soon as we could, but it's tough when we got so many crashes, and as soon as we open it up, they just pile back up. So, and less of us to kind of keep things under control. So do the best we can, try to keep it open. But, you know, as I stress to people on the news, I'm talking on news, whatever, it's not the weather that causes collisions. It's the unsafe speed and the unsafe driving in the weather that causes collisions. We don't shut the freeway down. Caltrans doesn't shut the freeway down. Collisions shut the freeway down. So people will remember that. I mean, speed and aggressive driving being the primary factors in the causes of these collisions, in the road closures. People need to understand that, you know, I've said this for 25 years, so I'm blue in the face. If you don't slow down, crashes will continue. So that's all I've got. Any questions for me about anything?
Anything from council? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Placer County Fire Department, CAL FIRE.
Well, good evening, Mayor Burris and members of the City Council. I'm Brian Estes, I'm the County Fire Chief. As we do normally, I'm going to let Captain Hale give our department report, but I wanted to take an opportunity tonight with all of you to make an introduction of a new member of our team here in the city of Colfax in Battalion 13. And I want to thank the City Council for Wes's participation with us on the interview panels. He was a great addition and gave a really localized insight to our competitive process and ultimately our selection process. So thank you, Wes, for that. So I'm going to read the information that I presented to my employees, if you don't mind, and it'll give you a quick overview on my introduction for our new battalion chief in Battalion 13, Battalion Chief Jeff Lovelace. So after a competitive internal process, I want to congratulate Battalion Chief Jeff Lovelace on his successful transfer to Battalion 13. Chief Lovelace is currently assigned to the Training and Safety Bureau in the Nevada-Yuba Placer Unit and will transition to his new assignment in Battalion 13 on February 28th, 2022. Chief Lovelace began his career in the year 2000 in the CAL FIRE Shasta Trinity Unit and worked station assignments in Redding, Fawn Lodge, and Lake Shasta. In 2007, he completed his paramedic program and became accredited in the state of California. That same year, Jeff transferred to the Amador El Dorado Unit, and over the following 7 years, worked in multiple assignments, including Battalion 2 and Battalion 5 in the Cameron Park Cooperative Fire Agreement as a fire apparatus engineer paramedic. In 2013, Chief Lovelace promoted to fire captain and took an assignment in the Valley View Fire Crew Camp in the Tehama Glen Unit before returning to AEU and his assignment at Growlersburg Fire Crew Camp. While at Growlersburg Camp, Jeff served in many capacities, including the administrative and operations captains. In 2018, Jeff transferred to the Training Bureau and ultimately promoted to the Training Battalion Chief in El Dorado County. And then finally in 2021, he transferred to the Nevada-Yuba Placer Unit as our Training and Safety Chief. Throughout his career, Chief Lovelace has been heavily engaged with training and development of our employees. He has served as a cadre member in multiple disciplines, including fire suppression operations, fire ground command, and advanced life support instruction. Jeff has advanced through the roles of Incident Command System and is currently assigned to CAL FIRE Incident Management Team 5 in the Planning and Operations section, and is also assigned to the Sacramento Regional Type 3 Incident Management Team as both a Plan Section Chief and an Operations Section Chief. Jeff is committing to one of our most complex battalions within the unit and will function in both a state and Placer County Fire Department role within Battalion 13, proudly serving the city of Colfax. Please join me in congratulating Jeff, Chief Lovelace, on this new and challenging assignment. So I appreciate your time and letting me introduce a new member of our team. As with anything, Chief Egan did an amazing job of building succession planning within his battalion, and something that I pride our unit on is building that depth of resource and that succession planning. And hence the reason that Captain Hale and the staff in Battalion 13 have been able to continue operations with no loss of continuity. And I'm very proud of that. So as we continue through this transition up until February 28th, Chief Rufinaut will remain the primary contact for our city manager. You always have my number, 24/7, 365. Sorry, Wes. And then we'll find an appropriate transition time where Jeff will be the point contact for the city and for Battalion 13. So with that, thank you very much, Council, and I'll turn our department report over to Captain Hale.
Brian. Welcome, Jeff.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of City Council, city staff, and the audience present and remote. I'm Nolan Hale, Cal Fire Captain, Placer County Fire Captain at Station 30 with your program report. So far this February, it's been fairly average, pretty minimal significant activity for us. However, yesterday we did have a vehicle come off of I-80 just outside the city limits and travel about 40 feet where it came to rest, requiring an extrication and a technical rope system. So we brought up our technical rescue team for some extra hands. So if you saw a lot of apparatus on the interstate, that's what it was all for. The patient decided not to go to the hospital at the end of everything. So very lucky. The Prius made it through very well, along with the driver. That was a lucky incident for that individual, as somebody caught it through their rear view mirror and were able to recognize where they were on the interstate and then give us direction to it. So pretty lucky. Moving into burning. We're still in open burning, and Cal Fire plans again next Tuesday to burn another 6 acres at the wastewater treatment plant to stand up that infrastructure a little more. Last time it went well. We looked at the product 2 weeks afterwards, and the burn came out well. A lot of fuel reduction and improvement in that area. So watch out for the smoke in the air next Tuesday. You can let everybody know. We did send a Colfax engine to Owens Valley to the airport fire as part of a strike team to go support the south operations with that. They are back, and we were able to staff a second engine immediately at Colfax to maintain our continuity. For you, Joe, we have good news. We contacted Union Pacific Vegetation Management Supervisor working out of LA, and they have fuel reduction efforts starting in the 2nd to 3rd week of March. So we can be looking for that. And we have made the request to start in the Colfax and Applegate area, because we have had some more concerns come up from outside of the city of Colfax as to the right of way, the Union Pacific Railroad.
Yeah, and we've been talking to a lot of people along there to try to
Yeah.
give you some backup.
So
So-
good progress, good contacts, and we're expecting to see some work starting the 2nd or 3rd week in March.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that'll position the whole city. So we've got another kind of like mini fire break once all that's cleaned up.
That's the intent. Yeah,
Yep,
they have
okay.
a big right of way that runs through the county. So.
Yep.
Yeah. For our safety message tonight, this is the time of year we start getting an influx of chimney and flue fires in the residentials. So please take the time to clean those chimneys, those flues. If you can do it yourself, that's great. If you need to call somebody, it's worth the effort to get someone out, especially after several cold months of continuous burning in your homes. So please take care of your residents. Do you have any questions for me?
Seeing none.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, do we have anybody from the Chamber of Commerce tonight?
Madam Mayor, I do not see the chamber here tonight.
All right. Then we will go ahead and move on from agency reports to item 5. We have a presentation, the winter storm after action strategy.
So we're gonna kind of bring this up, and Martin, you're welcome to lead the efforts as we kind of go through here. Council previously requested from the winter storm, December 26th, kind of an after action. Some incidents that would occur, what our solutions are to address those particular items. So from tonight, you're going to hear from our Public Works Director, Martin Jones, Cal Fire, and Placer County Sheriff. And we also have various members of the audience from the propane companies and PG&E Council to interact.
Is OES present?
They are not tonight.
All right, well, good evening, Madam Mayor, council members. Again, I'm Martin Jones, Public Works Director for the city of Colfax. Next slide, please. So as you all recall, I'm sure we all do, December 26, we got one heck of a snowstorm. So over our region, we got about we got quite a few feet of heavy, wet snow that fell over Colfax and, a lot of areas east of us. Caused a lot of trees to break, loss of power communication, and of course, dangerous road conditions. The city partnered with the Placer County crews based out of Auburn to help with the road clearing. We unfortunately didn't have enough staff or equipment to handle that. And like I said, Placer County did a wonderful job helping us out. We also contracted out with Simpson, who lended us a couple of their employees with some heavy equipment to help clear some of the downtown areas, moving the snow out of the parking areas to try and get business back up and running again. Next slide, please. So as I said earlier, one of the biggest concerns we had with the snowfall was communication breakdown. Due to limbs and trees falling, catching power lines and communication lines, we had a loss of cellular coverage and landline coverage. So to alleviate this problem in the future, staff have gotten together, we've had some discussions, and the purchase of a satellite phone would be definitely beneficial for our efforts in communicating with outside agencies, OES, fire, police, and then also any residents that have any kind of operable landlines. We're also looking at the possibility of purchasing long-range radios for staff to communicate with City Hall and possibly even OES during those times of crisis. And probably one of the more important things we could do is a purchase of a portable message board. One of the things that really came to light towards the end was just opening up the warming centers, just getting that coordinated, getting people to actually get to the location that we've chosen. So we have a lot of people walking around, pulling their kids around on sleighs, that type of thing. So it just gives them that option to figure out where to go to seek out any kind of help. Next slide, please. So again, the shortage of snow removal equipment. We had during the storm itself about 2,500 Chevy trucks with snow plows in the front, and we were just not keeping up at all, unfortunately. On average, we were getting about ½ inch of snow per hour, and the highest rates were about 2 to 3 inches per hour at about 3 o'clock in the morning. And I can vouch for that personally. And the rapid accumulation of snow coupled with the shortage of equipment just made it incredibly challenging for us. The consistency of the snow caused us to slip a lot. We weren't able to push the snow in an efficient manner, and we found ourselves getting stuck quite frequently. To combat this for possible future storms, the city has already purchased a stage 2 Cub Cadet snowblower. And I'd like to thank Joe. He provided some assistance with recommending some good product to go with. So this Cub Cadet snowblower will actually enable us to clear some of the areas that are not accessible with the snow plowers that we have, such as parking areas and also for sidewalks. The city will also be budgeting for a skid steer or Bobcat, and that will allow us to have multiple attachments to complete road maintenance, and then also with snow removal equipment. Staff will also be budgeting for a newer backhoe or front loader. And with this heavier piece of equipment, this will enable us to push more snow and negotiate some of the higher, steeper terrain that we have. I'm not sure if anybody of you witnessed, but even with Placer County crews and their large trucks, they even found themselves getting stuck off a depot a couple times. So next slide, please. So during the aftermath of the storm, we found that one of the biggest concerns that we had was just all the broken vegetation, broken trees, limbs, and we tried our best to get a lot of that cleared up. Residents were really stepping in and helping out. They unfortunately, whether they didn't have the means to get up to the corporation yard off of Rising Sun to drop it off themselves, or with the bins filling up way too fast, we would actually have them empty during the day, and by mid-afternoon they'd be full. So we had city staff going around the city, collecting all the tree limbs that were left out in front of people's properties. We staged all of that material up by Rising Sun, and with the help of Captain Hill from CAL FIRE, we were able to generate a sponsorship agreement with CAL FIRE, where they brought out one of their crews and a large chipper to get a lot of that debris cleared for us. So with that, that's my presentation. Anybody have any questions?
Madam Mayor, I was going to save part of this for my update later, but I think it's an appropriate time. There's a Cal OES grant. One of the opportunities is to apply for power backup generation. The staff has submitted an application for $800,000 for power backup generation for City Hall, Sheriff Substation, and the Sierra Vista Community Center. That was already received well with them. They've already reached back and asked us to submit a full application for that process at this point. So at a future agenda near, we'll be coming forward council to get your blessing to do that project.
Thank you.
I know we probably have questions from council. Do we have additional parties that we're planning to make presentations as part of this?
The CAL FIRE, Placer County Sheriff as well are going to be making presentation. I don't know who's queued up next in the slides. Fire.
So real quick before that, I just want to make sure, council, do you have any questions for Martin before we move to the next presenter?
No, I had a number of discussions with both Wes and Martin about like a signboard that'd be out in front of City Hall, like one of those trailer ones that are self-powered, that we could put up and leave messages for the whole community, like go to the Sierra Vista Center. Things like that would be really helpful, right? And it may even be worthwhile to have two of them, one that we put over by the market and one that we put in the downtown, so we kind of cover the whole town. And they're not that expensive, so it's just a good thing. I think the snow blower is a perfect thing for cleaning the sidewalks. When you look at the manual labor that goes into trying to clean the sidewalks, we had that crew that were inmates that came here, probation, and I got to spend some time with them, just making sure they got to the right places to do stuff. But that's a lot of hand labor, and one snowblower would do what 10 of those guys were doing. So I think that's a key thing. And I think upgrading our current backhoe to a little bit more modern one, and then looking at a Bobcat that can get in some of the tighter spots, just gives us a safety factor. And then they're also usable all the rest of the year for any other stuff that he's doing. So I think it's a really solid idea.
Yeah, thanks, Martin. I feel like your presentation was thorough and I appreciate the solution-oriented approach. All right, let's bring up CAL FIRE.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, Council, Assistant Chief Mike Rufnot. Tonight, we're going to talk about some of the successes we had during the storm. And I'm primarily going to talk about the successes in the city of Colfax area. So next slide, please. The ability to mobilize manpower and equipment to assist with keeping critical infrastructure up and running. As you know, early on in the incident, we cleared roads to the Colfax wastewater treatment plant and several of the lift stations to keep those open, as well as assisting Placer County Water Agency and some of the other water districts, gaining access to their infrastructure to keep the water up and running to the residents, and also assisting with our crews assisted with repairing those, gaining access to some of the canals, especially the one canal that had been damaged, so that crews could get in there, repair that. We made sure we had that potable water going to those communities, not only Colfax, but down into Meadow Vista and Weimar area. And then through that the first 7 days, our Cal Fire Placer County Fire Department crews put in about 2,500 hours worth of work. Next slide, please. Another success, communication with and representation for Placer County fire agencies to the city and county. And early on, we established the instant command structure, opened the Placer County EOC, and assigned a chief officer to the EOC down in Placer County. Those were all critical components. This also included my partner in crime, Sergeant Griffiths. And as we've talked about before, the instant command training that we do every year, basically fire-based in the springtime. As much as we talk about that as fire-based, this is all risk. And this training came in, it was a huge play on this event. So it's all risk, both agencies getting together, streamlining our operations. In the city of Colfax, we also work to mitigate complaints received mainly by West in a timely manner. And examples of this are things such as assisting with welfare checks, debris removal from homes and roadways, and assisting residents with snow removal. Some of the challenges we had during this event. Next slide, please. Single point ordering to the EOC. This was an issue the first day, and then we got that cleaned up. And when we say single point ordering, the idea behind that is to make sure that we're on the same page. Once we communicated this through Wes, it was discontinued. It's super important to have that single point ordering with the city and a point of contact for the city for better communication with the electeds, the public, and employees. It streamlines the ordering process. So instead of having 3 people ordering the same thing, it's all going to Wes or wherever your designee is, and then it's coming to the EOC, and we're able to handle that. Myself and Sergeant Griffiths were in the EOC, and I was assigned there by Chief Estes. My primary goal wasn't the CAL FIRE side, it was for all the fire districts in Placer County. So for instance, I'll take Colfax out of it for a minute. So I get a phone call from the fire chief in Forest Hill saying, hey, we have a snow removal issue at some of the schools. Can you handle that? It comes to me, and we take care of that. I get it handled. If his fire department couldn't handle it, we were sending crews out there. The same thing happened up here. Wes comes to us and says, hey, we need to get our guys into the sewer treatment plant or those lift stations. Comes to me, I get it taken care of. And it doesn't matter whether it's in the Placer County fire jurisdiction or another agency in Placer County. Those calls are coming in, and they're also not just fire calls coming to me. Sergeant Griffiths would come to me with, hey, can you guys possibly go up and do an agency or welfare check on some individuals, just because his deputies, it was all hands on deck. His deputies were very busy at that time, and there was a couple times that we assisted them with welfare checks, and they also assisted us with a lot of the stuff we did. So super important to have that single point ordering in place. And then next slide, please. And then special equipment needs. I talked about being all risk, and there's one of our crew buses right there. Their primary goal is, we think about in the summertime is cutting fire line, putting fires out. But this time of the year, what's the one thing we don't have on those buses? Snow shovels. How hard is it to get a snow shovel when this event goes down? So luckily, we were able to find a lot of snow shovels at the Placer Fire Center. But I was at first at a loss, like, wow, this is going to be a difficult one. And then the other thing we had was that came up in the city was the Company 36 equipment. While it did have chains for the fire equipment, they weren't fitted to the fire equipment. So that had to be, chains had to be put on, and the chains had to be fitted. And a lot of the equipment in Placer County, a lot of the agency had issues gaining access to some of the emergencies, some of the fires. Luckily, CAL FIRE, the bulk of our equipment now is 4-wheel drive, and a lot of our equipment, the 2 engines we had at Colfax there, were chained up a lot of the times to get into these areas, not just inside the city, but up in the higher country in Dutch Flat and Alta. And with that, is there any questions?
I got one question. Did at any time you guys lose communication with the cell towers being out and stuff like that? Can you address the communication question?
So we did Yes, we did. In the EOC, I had trouble getting a hold of some of my units due to some cell towers being down. And so there's a pretty easy fix to that. I have to go and get on my portable radio, and we'll actually work from Auburn up the hill and talk to those guys on the radio. And it obviously the emergencies are going out on the radio, so that's not hindering our operation whatsoever. But it's the stuff of like, hey, I need to somebody to go do a welfare check, or I need somebody to go try and shovel out an individual's car so they can get out of the area. So I'm setting up, we had that incident command structure set up very early. We put some of our fire captains into pickups, full drive pickups, and put them in charge of a couple engines in those different areas. And I would contact them on the radio and say, hey, can you give me a phone call real quick? They would get to an area where they could make a phone call. It wasn't all the cell towers that were down, it was just a few. And those cell towers were identified, and I made contact also with PG&E Brett Stanglin, and just to see if they could do anything. They were very receptive on assisting us with getting trees. We'd help them get trees out of the way with county roads. PG&E was in there getting lines cleared out of the way and getting some of that infrastructure up and in place very quickly. On the Verizon, AT&T, the cell phone side, that took them a little bit longer. So.
Thank you.
So would it make sense during an emergency like this to have one of your radios in City Hall?
No, it wouldn't, because the radios, there's a lot of radio traffic that goes on, and we have to remember that with all the radio traffic that's on our frequencies, we need to reserve that for emergency traffic. And I really didn't have an issue in the city of getting a hold of Wes. I was able to get a hold of him. I think the hardest time I had trouble getting a hold of you was he was driving one of the snow plows around, and I was trying to get a hold of him and say, hey, I will send an operator up there so you can take care of their business. And he'd already taken care of it. But yeah, it was pretty easy, pretty seamless.
Yeah, I think that goes back to the single point ordering again. And I think that's probably one of the most important things that we all need to remember, because it's not our job to decide what's high priority.
Correct. And you know, in the EOC, there's representatives from each agency, from the sheriff's office, fire, PG&E, PCWA, the water agencies. And so we're talking in there and trying to solve those problems and fix their problems too for infrastructure. And Kevin and I in these events are pretty much glued at the hip, and always available by phone and constantly. How often did we talk that time? A lot, too much. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't like him. So yeah. So we will, you know, it seems like even during the fires, him and I are glued at the hip, and that's going to continue for a long time.
So that raises one other question in my mind. How close did we come to losing the generators at any of the lift stations in terms of running out of fuel? Because this went on for a long period of time.
We were one generator for lift station 2, which had very low flow. It's the secondary lift station from lift station 1, which generally supports all the schools, which obviously were closed. There's probably only 3 or 4 residents that are actually tied to it. We were about a foot from the top of the storage tank, we'll call it, from having a spill, but it was, you know, into the 3rd day in, working with PG&E and CAL FIRE, getting the power lines out and the trees removed. Placer County coming in, trying to plow down there, made some attempts, and then we went back and made some more attempts, and we finally were able to get down there. It was not without challenge, I'll tell you that.
Was that on Rising Sun? Or
Yes, it was in the backside from, I think it's Hill Haven or something down the bottom.
And we were, when Wes identified that issue, I was on the phone with PG&E, and we actually were, it was like a freight train of equipment going in there, PG&E, the CAL FIRE equipment, and plows trying to make access into there, because it is a high priority at that point.
Yep.
Any more questions?
Any other questions from council?
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sergeant Griffiths again. I don't have the pretty PowerPoint. I've been kind of busy doing some other things. So Joe, to answer your question, you were concerned about lift stations and cell towers going out. We actually put it out that we would escort any of the cell companies, any of those companies up to their towers and get them through the freeway closures. And we did that on several occasions. We also have one snowcat for the sheriff's office on this side of the mountain. We had a couple up in Tahoe, but we also had that search for the missing skier where those were being used. We took our own communications people up to their towers to make sure that they could keep our radios running because they were having that same issue, right? No PG&E power, they had generators, they needed to get propane up to them. So we actually stuck them in our snowcat with the propane and got them up to make sure that we had emergency communications going throughout the county. So we never lost that. Our radio communications were there. One of the first challenges was just getting to work, coming up the hill, getting into Colfax. I hit the freeway closures. I'm lucky I have lights on my truck that allow me to go through all of that and continue on my way through the trees that are down across the roadways. I've been talking to Wes and several of you on the city council about bringing up a second patrol car to Colfax. That'll be happening in probably a couple of months. My thought was we'll do it right before fire season kicks off, not knowing that winter storm was going to come in. And that could have been another necessity. We also identified that we don't have enough 4x4 Tahoes for our deputies. Usually we run, they're called 4 SIL units. They all have 4x4s. We have 4 other ones that are in the North Auburn area, and then all our homeless liaison deputies, the 4 of them drive them, and our coroner's cars. But that wasn't enough. We're lucky in a respect that we didn't have all our coroner positions full, because when we needed 4x4s, we told the guys to go grab them out of that lot and bring those up. So we had the vehicles, but now we're actually looking at changing our fleet over from mostly 2-wheel drives on the western slope to mostly 4-wheel drives. So we'll always have that access to get up the hill. We're also looking at switching out all our snowmobiles. I don't know if you guys know this. We have 2 that are actually stationed here at the Placer County Courtyard, 2 in Forest Hill. That way, if there's something going on, we can grab those and go. We're looking at another snowcat, purchasing a second one. And then I was lucky enough to go to snowcat driving school last week, which is a lot of fun. You get to do a lot of good stuff in the snow in one of those big machines. So challenge 2, you've already gone over the single point of ordering. That is important, Trinity. You hit on it. That was one of our biggest things, because not only is it from the city, but it's everywhere else. And we have people contacting the road department or the CEO's office of the county. When the CEO goes to the OES and says, hey, I need this done, it can change everything we do. It can totally throw that wrench to where, oh, we've got to do this because, well, this guy works for that person. That's his direct boss. Where we're already putting that all together and trying to get the best resources out to everybody we can to take care of everybody. One of the biggest challenges we see every winter in Colfax is the inundation of people from outside the area to the city of Colfax during snow, right? They close down the freeways, everybody stops and they get out. That's a curse and that's a good thing at points. We don't want to chase the people who are spending money away from our community. So on an event like this, which is a huge storm, probably 1 in every 20 years, I've never seen it when I've been working for the Placer or for the county of Placer. Never seen it, the snow, the amount of trees down, the wires down, that made it difficult. I've been talking to Trinity over that and about putting up signs, no parking signs there on North Auburn. Maybe changing some of those public parking lots and putting signs there during the winter time that say 2-hour parking, 1-hour parking, whatever the businesses want to do. That's not something we're necessarily going to go fight and enforce. It's something that kind of maybe takes those non-locals and lets them realize that maybe not want to park here. I'll continue back down the hill, back home, because the freeway is going to be closed for 8 to 12 hours. And that freeway signboard, that may be a great thing to put up that says, hey, freeway is going to be closed for the next 12 hours, maybe go home, or something, however you want to put that on there politically correctly on there to maybe get them to go someplace else. Because of the storms, our deputies were busy. We had to prioritize what we were doing, and it wasn't necessarily going to move that traffic unless Wes gave me that phone call saying, I can't clear this road. Can you get a deputy over here to start pushing those cars out so I can get the snow plows in? That was probably one of the biggest challenges, is just making our way around the city. Some of the success we had, We had our Deputy Sheriff's Association dinner that Saturday night, so we had a lot of deputies out of town. And even so, a lot of our deputies were impacted at their houses. They all live here in the foothills. They had trees down. So a lot of them ended up calling sick because they couldn't even get out of their driveways. But we were able to call other deputies in from the Roseville area, Sacramento area to come in to work. We were never running short on deputies. And we also put out extra groups of deputies for those welfare checks outside of Forest Hill, Colfax, the upper regions. We had snowmobile crews assigned to go out and try to get some of those long distance contacts made. And then we worked really well with all our public safety partners. Cal Fire, I got to tell you, they go to work, right? They go to work every single day, and they brought their saw crews in and just cleared the path. The one thing when it comes to that I wish we could do, and this is for PG&E, is to make sure we get somebody in our EOC right there beside us, because what would be nice is to be able to send out a team that includes a PG&E worker who can actually handle down lines with Cal Fire's crew, with the snowplow crews. They can make their ways to those trees, because we couldn't cut the trees out of the roadways if there was a power line that was through it. It could be cut at both ends, laying on the ground, but we still can't touch it. So I would ask that we get PG&E to be there, get a troubleman with us, so that we can pull those lines and continue to move on our way, and just keep those with a couple of saw crews. That would make our jobs a heck of a lot easier around the city and the county if we were able to do that. And then in the future, in the next month or so, Dave Atkinson with OES, we're actually going to put on an incident command systems class for all of you, and kind of teach you about OES and what we do in those incident command posts, and how you can help us make it easier for everybody around. And then you'll have that understanding of what we're doing there. And maybe it'll answer all these questions that you have going, wait a minute, is Griffiths and Rufinaut, are they just sitting across the desk from each other, looking into each other's eyes? Or are they actually working in it? We're there, Wes. We were in contact all the time. He called me whenever he needed something, and we were able to do that. I think that the satellite phone would be a good thing for him to have on his hip, but that single point origin is the number one thing. Any other questions that I can ask or answer?
Well, I just want to touch on something. You very politely didn't mention the fact that you guys end up dealing with a lot of really aggressive people who are not understanding the situation, who aren't caring about the current circumstance or the current community that they're now a visitor in. And for law enforcement, that's particularly challenging, because we live in a community that has a high respect for law enforcement. And I think a lot of folks here would be appalled to see what you guys deal with very simple interactions sometimes, such as asking people to get off of private property. Yes. And this is something that me and Kevin had discussed, that we need to give more tools to law enforcement to help with those interactions as well. And one of the things that we talked about was potentially putting together brochure packets that can be available at the gas stations, and maybe we give some to the deputies in these situations where the roads are closed down, so they know exactly what's here, where it is, what's available to them as far as visiting businesses or, needing to use the restroom. And if their needs cannot be met, they know it's time to leave. And so
on that point, what I really need from those private property owners, I can't call the police and say, hey, there are people on Bob's property I want to move. I can't do it. I don't know Bob's property. Bob has to call into the sheriff's office. They have to call dispatch, make that report, say, yes, we want the sheriffs to come take these people off our property. If they're not willing to leave, we want them cited or arrested for trespassing. Our goal is to get them to leave, but we need that tool. We cannot and we will not go make contact with somebody if we don't have that tool in our back pocket. It's 2022 and deputies are losing their jobs, they're being sued, and they're just trying to do the right thing. And we'll do the right thing. We'll make PA announcements, we'll do that stuff, but we need people to call into dispatch. That's a way that we can go back and go, no, look, there was a phone call. It's audio taped. Everything is captured for that piece of evidence to protect your deputies who are out here working hard for you on the streets.
And it's hard too, because even when we're talking about a safety issue, like playing in an open construction site, where I call Kevin and say, hey, we've got little kids playing in an open construction site at the hotel whose, parents or guardians are filling up the parking lot at Marvell's. This was an origin of some of that discussion of, okay, I guess I need to call property owners and have them go ahead and put in a complaint before they can do anything.
Yeah. Any questions from anybody else for the sheriff's office?
Thank you. Perfect.
Mayor, I didn't know, Brandon, did you have anything you want to share tonight? Or are you just here to answer questions or?
Come on up.
Good evening, Mayor Burris, council members, Brandon Sanders, Sierra Division Government Affairs, PG&E. Really appreciate the opportunity to share a few thoughts with you today. I've got some notes here. Wanted to cover a couple of items, talk about some of the challenges we faced as a company with this event, some of the successes or wins that we accomplished, and touch on a few other items. So I'd like to start by just reinforcing Chief Rufinat's comments around that single point of contact. Typically, you would hear from me under difficult circumstances. That's my job. I am the liaison for elected bodies across Placer County and the entire division. But in a situation like this, we adhere to the incident command system that requires that single point of contact, which is facilitated through the Office of Emergency Services. And so I do apologize for not having been in more frequent and detailed contact, but it is important that we adhere to that process because it works and it's highly effective. And I think that was something that was called out by our law and fire partners. I wanted to reinforce that PG&E also applies that approach to our emergency response activities. Additionally, Sergeant Griffiths, I will definitely acknowledge that as a company, we could have been more aggressive in embedding resources with the road crews. We heard that early on. We addressed it, but that'll certainly be, I think, we'd all agree, something that we put forward very early on in an event like this off into the future. We certainly acknowledge that there's a safety concern with downed conductor across roads where access is important. We heard that loud and clear, and that's very much something that will be corrected for future events. We had great success in Nevada County, for example. We embedded some qualified electrical workers with Cal Fire and county roads. There's a little bit of growing pains there, but after about a day or two, we got that in place and it worked really well. I'd like to acknowledge my colleague Brent Stenglin, longtime service in the fire space with many of the people you see here in this room. He's been a great mentor to me and resource in terms of emergency response and how we manage these types of situations. And he is responsible, like I am, to elected bodies. He is the one that is our liaison with OES, law and fire, and the like. And he's been a great resource for us as well, and really an advocate for the city and the county as we moved our way through this event. So just to speak to some of the challenges, it certainly wasn't perfect out of the gate. There were definitely some challenges we faced as a company. I think the first and foremost of that was that this occurred on a holiday. Crew resources were limited. Folks were on vacation. PG&E employs a lot of contract electrical workers that arrive in California from throughout the country. For anyone who drives on Ophir Road in rural Auburn, for example, there's International Line Builders, has a large yard there. I drove by that every day through this event. There's 40 line trucks parked, just sitting there. A lot of those guys are from places like Kansas, Indiana. They had flown back to their home states for 2 weeks to enjoy their holiday with their families. So coming out of the gate, we were challenged in terms of crew resources. I will say that we saw it coming. We put out the request for mutual aid before the event even began. We put out the request for additional staffing before the event even began. But that was slow to trickle in simply because a lot of folks had pre-approved vacation, and that was certainly a challenge that we faced. But that's not going to happen again. We're working to correct that, making sure we have adequate crew resources to respond in real time. But on the front end of the event, we certainly were challenged with the availability of qualified workers to get the work done. Another item that was a challenge for us, and it's no one's fault really, but just the availability of flat ground. We had eventually 280 line crews, which is typically 2 heavy trucks and a trouble truck. So it's that over 600 vehicles, not to mention thousands of poles, all of the other equipment we needed to lay down and make accessible in an orderly fashion for folks to access and go out and build it back. So if anyone has large flat ground they want to make me aware of, I'd be happy to put you in touch with our land agents. But that was certainly a challenge. The availability of flat ground in this country is quite difficult. We ended up having to lease property in Rockland, Wheatland to stage a lot of our resources simply because there just wasn't enough ground available for us to get everybody in place in a more local fashion. So that was another one of the challenges. Again, just simply the scale of the event, a forested landscape stressed by years of drought, covered over by heavy, low snow over a long period of time, caused tree failure on a massive scale. Yes, there may have been, circumstances in certain areas where it was an equipment failure, but this was largely a tree failure driven event. And it certainly challenged our crews in terms of building the system back. We had customers out. I think the longest customer was out for about 17 days. And that would have been out in Sierra County, Downeyville, Sierra City, that kind of area. But we got it done, and I'm really proud of the folks that we had out there in the field. We actually had a really nice reception from Weimar School and EB Kane and Auburn when the line crews came out and got some thank you notes and some get well cards for those line workers that were injured during the event. So that was really nice to see. I guess I don't want to take up too much more of your time, but I will say, in terms of customer supports, it's pretty unprecedented, the level of support that PG&E brought forward for our customers. Everything from firewood, showers, and laundry trucks. We provided substantial monetary support to the Placer County Food Bank. Of course, we provided many of the supports we would provide typically during a PSPS event, which folks are largely aware of. We also provided a significant grant to the Placer Community Foundation, who distributed gift cards to those in need for purchases of things like gas, food, other essential needs. And we also have a really strong partnership with an organization called Freed out of Nevada County. That organization supports those in our community with access and functional needs. We were able to provide things like housing or hotel vouchers, food replacement, backup batteries, transportation services, and a number of other supports for those customers with those access and functional needs. So we're really proud of the customer supports we brought forward during the event. Beyond that, I will say, even though I wasn't able to, field inquiries or priorities from local elected officials in real time, I was able to participate in a number of public engagements. Supervisor Cindy Gustafson invited me to participate in a town hall, which I thought went really well. I've got some really good information out to the district. Appreciate Supervisor Gustafson for that opportunity. Was also during the thick of the event invited to the Board of Supervisors, provided a real-time update at that engagement as well. So just really doing what we can to keep folks informed within the confines of the incident command system. Really, I guess to leave you with one final note, the deployment of crews across this event was the largest in PG&E history. We had almost 280 crews through mutual aid and our own resources deployed to this event. It was quite an extraordinary undertaking. From as close as Smud and Roseville Electric to as far away as New Mexico and Iowa. We had folks coming from all over just to help us out in support of our communities. So at the end of the day, we had over 1,300 damaged locations in Placer County alone. Pretty incredible. If one way you can look at it is we had a really good vegetation management project completed with all those trees that fell down, just to bring a little levity to it. Also, we rebuilt the system. 1,300 individual pieces of equipment are brand new as of today. So, we're working to make the system safer every day. We're trying to show up for our hometowns. I live in Placer County. I love this place. And those are my comments. I'm happy to answer any questions. Thanks.
Thank you, Brandon. I would say let's have your land department talk to our city manager.
Okay.
Because we have a wonderful closed landfill that is nice and flat.
Oh.
Yeah,
We absolutely should be making available for
Okay.
emergency response.
That's good to know. Let's
So-
we'll have a conversation about that.
It is, and it's asphalt, about 3 acres.
It's all
Wow,
paved.
okay.
So
I can't believe we missed that on the Google Earth because there were literally people in our EOC like scanning Google Earth for like anything that looks like flat parcels. So that's good information. Thank you very much.
absolutely. And thank you guys again for the significant effort you guys made on the ground as far as the individuals and not just making sure that the system came back online, but the people were able to carry on with some normalcy while they waited for it to come back online. Personally, I oversaw the distribution of the gift cards and we were able to successfully distribute $5,700 worth of gift cards to people who were actively out of power and still needed fuel and food and things like that. So obviously that doesn't cut into the folks that, were out for a significant amount of time and, weren't eligible for reimbursement, but it got people through who were struggling by day 13 to, keep their kids fed while also powering their generator. So thank you.
Well, thank you. I've always appreciated the partnership with City of Colfax. You guys are great. And, one thing I will say is we learned a lot and we'll be better prepared for the next one because it's probably coming not too far from now.
It's not if, it's when.
Exactly.
Anybody else have anything?
Nope.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate you all. Thank you.
And then do we have anything from any of the other utility providers that are here tonight? Nothing specific?
Do we have a mayor guest here?
Joe, you have some questions for AmeriGas?
Yeah.
Do you want to come on up to the podium, please? Thank you.
How you doing tonight? My name is Tom Siriana. I've been with Grass Valley location for about 4 months now. I'm not new to AmeriGas, been with AmeriGas for over 15 years. How can I help you?
Yeah, so my question was, because the downtown area ran out of propane.
Yes.
So I'd like to understand like what you guys are doing, so in the future, we don't see an incident like that.
We actually ordered over 200 telemetry monitors for just Colfax and Nevada City and Grass Valley that we're going to be installing this spring and summer for all the commercial districts. So this doesn't happen again. You know, I'd like to say that been through wildfires, hurricanes, snow conditions, and never seen anything like this before. The only word I can describe was crazy. It was just crazy for the first 3 weeks. Like the gentleman said earlier, you know, the day after Christmas, things just went right. It seemed like it never stopped. Do want to thank Cal Fire and local sheriffs because they actually helped us out because of that fact, because we couldn't run after hours. They attended to some of our after hour calls and things like that. So do appreciate that.
Yeah, the thing that bothered me the most was when we were talking, when we finally got a representative to talk to about the main tank that feeds all of North Main Street that was out. And I asked the question, what's the process for firing this, to filling the tank back up and starting everybody back up again? And the supervisor on the phone told me, he says, we don't know. And that was a disappointing statement. So that's when I called Cal Fire and your guys came out just to say, like, let's just keep an eye on this, because what I'm worried about is some of the appliances in these buildings are not like the modern ones where when the pilot goes out, you have to hold the button in to light it to get on. They're the ones that when the pilot is on, if there's no pilot flame, their gas comes out. Right? And I was worried about a lot of these people were gone from the buildings. So there's nobody in there to check. And if somebody turned their gas on, what happens?
So I don't know who you spoke to. I did speak to a gentleman. I don't remember if it was.
Yeah, it was me. On what's, yeah,
So
but
the
but the support team on the phone.
call center.
Yeah, at the call
So-
center, they turned me over to one of the managers or supervisors there, and the answer was, we don't know. I'm sorry, that's an unacceptable answer.
I think I explained the process to you
Yep.
and then I can send it to everybody here.
Yeah,
So-
well, that, when you were in the field, right, the field guy knew what to do. But what I was concerned is, prior to that, there was nobody that knew what was going on.
Well, the call center usually just states that, you know, you need to shut the tank off and then we get a service tech out to respond.
But this is the tank that feeds the whole couple blocks.
Yeah. I'll
And so it's
explain
not
the
a tank we
process.
turn off, right? It's,
So once you call on a leak or anything like that, if you're out of gas, the tank has to come off for emergency purposes.
Yeah.
The process when you do something like that, whenever you're out of gas or you have a leak call like that is that one, you got to make sure that all the meters or buildings are shut off.
Yep.
And once you do that, then you got to lock each one of those off.
Yep.
And you have to fill that tank and then you have to pressurize that tank for a certain amount of time. In that particular case, it's 10 minutes.
Yep.
At operating pressure.
But the message I'd like you to communicate back to your management team is, when they put a supervisor on the phone and get asked the question, he could say, I don't know, I can find you the answer. I accept that, but not, we don't know. Because that leaves us as a city, what am I supposed to do? It'd be like if I called, you know, Cal Fire and they said, well, we don't know. I say, no, we always get an answer, or we get a person that says, I can call you back with an answer. We never get, I don't know.
I don't know who you spoke to. Like I
Yep.
said, usually they instruct you to shut your tank off until we get somebody out there.
Yep.
I think I did speak to you and I think I did explain that process to you. So,
Great, thanks.
all right. Is there anything else?
I was just hoping, and this isn't just a question for AmeriGas, but our propane providers in general in the room tonight. We kind of across the board, even after the snow melted and we got the roads clear, there was definitely a backup of the ability for people to have propane services provided. And I was hoping you guys could give a short explanation into kind of what culminated to create that situation, because it wasn't just one company, it was pretty much across the board.
Yeah, you know what? Like I said, I've been to wildfires and hurricanes, and the one thing I really, really like that they do is they do incident command meetings. And I think in a situation like this is something that we should think about doing now. I'm sure CAL FIRE and local sheriffs and OES do that already, but it would be nice for the providers of propane to be part of that too. The reason why I say that is because as we go out and they go out, this information can go out to everybody as far as road closures, power lines down and things like that. So when we meet up each morning, at the end of the day, we can come together as a group to find out, hey, this road's not accessible. Hey, there's power lines down there. Because what was happening is literally we were going out to these locations that we couldn't access. If it wasn't for snow and it wasn't for power lines. So a lot of our time was spent just doing that. And then the other part is a lot of people in the valley have generators. They don't have enough storage space for it. So what happens is when that generator kicks on, an average generator uses about 8 gallons an hour. So if you have a 250 gallon tank, you're looking at 200 gallons. Within about 3 to 4 days, you're going to be out of gas. So now we're doing this. Now we're running around, right? And try to support all the other areas too. So, you know, in that case, one of the things that we're going to be looking at this year is having a bigger storage capacity for the generators and letting them know, you know, that they have to understand that, hey, we just can't get out there that day. Go out to other customers do things too.
So if I understand correctly, did you guys not receive an invitation to participate with OES? Is that?
The only thing I heard was after about the second week, OES was involved and that they were actually sending us out emails at customers where they were out of gas or they were in need of gas. I don't know if it was a breakdown of communication, but that's where I got. And I actually saw an OES email that went out to, I think, to everybody in the valley about, you know, making sure that, you know, your driveway was clear, that we had clear access to the tank and things like that. And I thought, this is great. This is great information. It's not everybody.
Yeah,
and I
this
think
is
the next
important to
day,
know.
that's when we started getting information of customers that needed deliveries.
Okay, so you're saying it took about 2 weeks
I
before.
think don't quote me on that. Yeah,
Okay.
It did take a while. I was really impressed that it came out like
And
that.
I'm sorry to put you on the spot like
Oh,
this.
it's fine.
That was really the purpose of this evening, was to flush out what we knew so far and what we need to know to do better next time. And this is definitely something that I would have expected propane or fuel providers to have been involved since the beginning, knowing that people were on generators. So it's something for us to follow up on. Outside of that, and knowing that there were access issues, it sounded like there were propane shortages. Were there shortages of propane for
No,
delivery?
to my knowledge.
Okay,
The problem was just we couldn't get there.
okay,
And in the affected areas too, because you got to remember, this was El Dorado, Nevada, and Placer County too. And then lower parts of, you know, the Auburn area too.
and anyone else, if you guys are with the propane companies, feel free to come on up also. If you guys have, because I can see you guys shaking your heads, kind of giving me
Yeah,
a,
because I was under the impression that there was an actual gas shortage and we had to get some gas brought in from Canada.
there was some mixed communication that, you know, was circulating in the rumor mill with the public, to be frank. And so it's nice to hear it, you know, from the horse's mouth, kind of what your guys' struggles were, so we can try to plan ahead for next
Not on
time.
AmeriGas, and just so you know, it was I'd say about 7 days later, we brought in airborne forces to help out within the area. And we actually staged them down in the Loomis area.
Mhm.
So then that way they weren't up in the affected areas, and then they came up into the areas and worked. We worked till dark, and then after that, you know, because of the power lines being down and things like that, we just felt it was unsafe. I will say this, and I gotta say, knock on wood, nobody at AmeriGas got hurt. And, you know, dealing with the areas and the terrain and things like that, I think it was very good.
Yeah.
Do I think,
So can we,
maybe next time we learn something from all this? Oh, yes, definitely.
so can we take an action that, shouldn't they be interlocked with OES? But they don't send a truck out that has no place to go?
Well, that was kind of what I was getting towards. And could I have you two please introduce yourselves and what company you're with?
Yeah, hi, my name is Andy Fellman. I'm with Camp War Propane Energy Distribution Partners.
Okay.
Good evening. Thank you for having us. My name is Ryan Murtaugh with Suburban Propane.
Thank you.
Service Nevada County, Placer County, and Yuba County.
And just real quickly, I mean, we did hear from AmeriGas. Do you guys mind kind of giving me, you know, what your guys' struggle was during this time? Because again, it was across the board, propane providers having issues, so. if there's some way the city can be supportive for the next outage, we'd like to know.
So I will start by saying there was no propane shortage. There was ample amounts of propane. The problem was the access to get to the locations, to get the deliveries made, freeway shutdowns, access to some of our yards. And I'll tell you just a quick story about my particular yard in Weimar. We had contracted for snow removal in the event that something would come up. We were unsuccessful when we needed that provider to be there for us. So we literally, with shovels in hand, spent hours upon hours trying to dig out our yard so we could get our bobtails out to get to locations. Problem was, we still, at that point, we had no product and the transports couldn't get to us to bring in the gas. By the time we actually finally got everything clear and we were able to start planning on bringing the transports in, Caltrans unfortunately decided that they were going to use that off ramp as a plow spot to put their snow right back in front of our facility again, which we had to go back and try to dig out again. The main challenges for us were getting into places. Again, I never heard from the emergency office at all. No emails, no phone calls. Now, granted, our phone lines were down. We had no phones for over a week. Fiber optic lines were cut. We couldn't get out. We couldn't get customer calls. We started notifying our other neighboring offices and putting emails out to as many customers as we could, letting them know what our situation was. But we were sending trucks into areas that we just simply couldn't get into multiple times. And unfortunately, we're getting bad data from customers are, saying our roads are fine. You can get right in there, and we'd get there, and there was no way we could get into a lot of these places. So we were spinning our wheels a lot. The other side of that, unfortunately, was there's literally hundreds, thousands of people on generators now. And so one thing we're going to be working on is a communication with them in events like this about conservation. There was no conservation. It was run those generators 24/7 until you ran out of gas. And so it became very difficult. We had customers that were having to go back to every 3-4 days among the hundreds of calls and emails that we're getting in on any given day. I worked 15 and 19-hour days. I was sleeping in the office. We were getting no cooperation from the state and the CHP to get our hours for our drivers extended so that they could be out there longer making the deliveries. By the time we actually got that exemption for them, the event was long gone, done and over. So if that's something that we could get some assistance in, that would be of great help.
No, these are all really important to know, and I feel like it's extremely important for us to understand that you guys have delivery access issues to your yard, because that, I think, gives us a good understanding of where the rumor that there was no propane came from. You guys can't get your delivery, you can't deliver it.
And that's what was happening. So
yeah, that's why it's so important. Like when they talked about the single point of contact, right? I think somehow we have to have the propane suppliers linked in with OES so that when there is a problem, we can say, okay, get a crew over, get their driveway clean so they can get a delivery in there so we get propane out.
I'm all for that.
Right. And then I hate to see a truck go all the way out to a customer that they can't get to because trees and power lines are down, and then you got to repeat the whole process over again. So I think it's another critical thing that we could tie in.
I've been in the industry for 30 years. I've been through plenty of snow events in the past. But nothing quite like what this was. This was different. In the devastation, the access, the freeway literally being closed, where it took me normally a 45-minute drive from my house to get to the office was over 3 hours. So I knew what we were going to be in for. It wasn't like we weren't completely prepared. We knew there was weather coming in. We were out making early deliveries, pulling in as many customers as we could to get to them in a timely manner before this event happened. But it all came apart. It all came apart. We did the best we could. And there was a light at the end of the tunnel. We did get there. So.
Okay.
Okay, thank
you.
Thank you for all your efforts.
Yeah.
Sorry, guys. I got off the phone with Dave Atkinson because I know reach out from OES. I talked to Dave because I know we were talking about it. We heard about the propane outages starting to happen about day 4, day 5 was when people started running out.
Right.
We called the state OES. That's who we call. They apparently reached out to the Propane Trade Association.
Yeah.
Western Propane, and that's who we go through, and then they're supposed to dispatch these guys out. Part of it is they will only fill their own tanks.
Right.
Right, so if Suburban's in one place, this company's not gonna go there to fill those tanks, and they're all spread out pretty thin. I believe it was your yard that needed to be shoveled out. We did send a crew out there to go help them get out of their yard. And by the time they got there, you guys had gotten it all done. So we didn't know about that issue, but as soon as we heard about it, it was, let's send a crew out there and get the propane out because we got to get propane to people's houses.
So I think this is a good moment to highlight that, although we try to go with the single ordering point, this might show that sometimes if we go too high up the ladder and then try to come back down.
I would agree. I'm
There's a
going to talk to
breakdown.
Dave, and we'll try to get Shauna Pratt on board with getting
Yeah.
all the company's numbers.
And get a
Because-
single point from each of
Right,
them.
just like the river fire, I remember several of these guys' faces
Mhm.
at my meetings when we were talking repopulation. And we can get one of them into the EOC.
Exactly.
So that they can help us with those issues. So I'll make sure that that's on Dave's desk.
Perfect. And then, thank you.
Just to reiterate what my colleague said, we were all pretty slammed. So, and again, for the most part, I think, we did a good job of trying to prepare for it. In the weeks leading to it, it was getting cold, and we were really pushing to get tanks topped off. But again, the generator usage created a major issue. That and the fact that the outreach that we got from our customers was fairly panicked, right? So while we were doing our best to respond to what we would consider to be the most critical things, medical emergencies, I need to have power to run my oxygen and things like that. Other customers were falling by the wayside. We also ran into issues where we would show up to a customer location, claim that they were out of gas and had maybe 2 or 3 days worth, and that caused their neighbor to run out. So some of those challenges were things that we faced. That's not anything necessarily new, for us in the wintertime. However, it was greatly exacerbated by this event. People were panicked, and understandably so. It was scary.
Yeah.
As far as the access issues, yeah, same thing as far as being able to get in. Interestingly enough, we also had, even after the roads were cleared, driveways were cleared, we had some instances where drivers were delayed because they would go make a delivery and come out and there would be a tree crew blocking the road. They'd have to wait for 20, 30 minutes to get out of the road. Or, to get off the road and continue on. So that's where Matt actually made a note. I don't know how, to what extent we can have real-time information. It's very challenging, but even a rough idea of what area is going to be targeted in a particular day by PG&E or tree crews, so that we can make sure that we stay out of there, leave everybody alone, because you guys don't need us, big bobsled running down the road, when you're trying to do work either, right? So I think that would be incredibly helpful. And again, reiterate, no propane shortage. We were kept well stocked. We just had a heck of a time getting enough gas out to everybody.
Yeah.
So, any questions?
Well, thank you all very much. And I just want to reiterate that, the point of this meeting isn't to put anybody on blast or, say, oh, okay, let's wave fingers and say it's so-and-so's fault. It's really to identify where help was needed more, that next time something happens. And I think that this is a good opportunity for, us to identify that we need our propane companies to have access to OES as much as OES needs access to you guys, because if you guys have access to our OES team, they can provide a lot of this information so you guys are aware of, what's been able to be cleared, what's safe, what we know is absolutely not safe. Because we all know when a customer's panicked, they're not going down 3 streets over to check and make sure that there's no down power lines for you. They can get their car in and out, so therefore they think you can. And OES is probably going to have a better idea. So I really appreciate you guys coming out tonight and speaking to us about, what happened and your guys' perspective.
Madam Mayor, just for council's information, JS West is on Zoom as well.
Okay. Would JS West be willing to speak for just a moment on I know it's probably going to be a lot of the same, but if they have anything unique they'd like to contribute to the conversation.
JS West, did you want to add anything? They haven't raised their hand.
Okay.
And one thing I want to just say to everybody, we really appreciate all the hard work that all these different teams put in. Because this was an unbelievable job of what had to be done. We're just trying to say, what can we learn from it that could make it better, easier, when something like this happens again.
Well, and how can we support you? And it looks like we've definitely got some good action items on how we can try to be supportive.
I would just like to, stress that open line of communication, that's important, and been through these wildfires and hurricanes, and I've seen these incident command meetings and they work. So if we could be a part of this, that open line of communication, so then that way we know what's going on in the area too, so we're not running around in circles like you said too. So,
Out there, all the numbers. Has to be. Call wherever we are. It's always open. We have to reach out to you. Give us a call.
Just to repeat that for the folks on Zoom, Kevin Griffiths was just letting our propane providers know that they can reach out to the non-emergency line and get a direct access over to OES if we're having an issue with communication. All right, council have any additional questions?
I want to say thank you for taking time out of your evening to come in and give your, testimony. Thank you.
Did we have any public comment on this item this evening?
We received public comment on Facebook Live from Christy Perman stating the streets were unplowed in some areas and impassable in many areas.
Thank you. All right, if we have no further public comment and no further comments from council, I will go ahead and conclude our presentation section. And we can move now into public comment as we have no public hearings this evening. I'm going to go ahead and read the statement for public comment. Every resident has the opportunity to address the city council for comments when the appropriate time for public comment is called. You may speak to the council on any item that is not on this agenda. The council cannot act on items not included on the agenda. However, items will be automatically referred to staff. Please come up to the podium, speak your name clearly. At your discretion, please state your address. Please make your comments brief. You'll have 3 minutes to speak. If you're joining via Facebook Live, please write public comment before your comment and have it included in the public testimony. Do we have any public comment at this time? Come on up.
Hello, good evening. Thank you for your time. Am I allowed to address the audience in a question or like the sheriff's department just as part of my public comment?
The public comment is purely to address council on any item not on the agenda.
Okay, so I sent a video to the council the other day. I don't know if everybody got to see it. It was
I'll be honest with you, I have not had an opportunity to see it yet.
I did.
Okay, so I don't want to really talk about that publicly because I believe it puts me in danger, just talking about that item. But as far as public safety goes, I would just like to know what council thinks about if it's safer for somebody to purchase cannabis at a retail store, or is it safer for them to purchase it on the street from an illegal operator? That's a question I'm asking you as far as public safety. And public safety is a priority, but it's not defined. So when I address public safety, it's not like a singular issue, it's huge. And the other thing is Colfax code requires that all businesses with a physical address outside the city's taxing jurisdiction who conduct retail sales in Colfax of products that are similar to a business that are licensed inside the city's taxing jurisdiction are required to pay taxes at the same rate of businesses selling the same type of products. So you guys weren't sure about how to collect the taxes. There's plenty of ways to do that digitally. And like Placer County that doesn't have an ordinance is not collecting any taxes and not required to pay taxes. So when they do a sale in Placer County, they only have to charge half the tax rate of what their city charges. So in Nevada City, if it's 4%, they pay to Nevada City, nothing to the state. Or nothing to the county. It's upon the resident of the county to fill out a form and file that themselves when they pay their taxes. So it's on the actual purchaser of the product that the taxes fall upon. If there's no ordinance or allowance of cannabis sales or, so I just wanted to clarify that there is ways of collecting taxes in any jurisdictions, and sooner than later, I'm pretty sure there will be cannabis taxing districts throughout the state, and they'll divvy up the businesses that are operating, and they'll, divvy up the funds, however that works. But just to clarify that we're still pushing for adult use. It's a public safety issue, and that's all I have for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. If you'd like to send me your comments about how you believe the city can implement taxes on these businesses, I'd be more than happy to receive that. Thank you.
Council Mayor, thanks for the opportunity. Jim Dion, Highway 174. I noticed Sean's not here again tonight, which is fine, but
Sean's here.
Huh?
He's on Zoom.
Hi, Sean. Well, this is the reason I'm up here
Jim.
tonight. I was wondering if it's possible to have a monitor on, like when you're on Zoom on Sean or David, whoever not be here, so that we can see them. It would be, I don't know if you guys have discussed that before, but it's pretty easy to do.
I'm open to looking into that. Thank you. Do you have any additional public comment? Anything online?
Nothing online.
All right. Well, seeing none, we will go ahead and move on from public comment. We are now at council and staff reports. We'll go with committee reports. We'll start with Sean. Do you have any committee reports this evening?
Just wanted to report that the Placer Sierra Fire Safe Council meeting for tomorrow has been canceled. We were unable to get a quorum together. A lot of people out of town, including myself. I'm still out in Mississippi taking care of a terminally ill family member. Hope to be back soon. But that was all I had.
Thank you, Sean. All right, Joe?
No update.
Okay. David? Marnie?
No, the ad hoc for homelessness in Placer County got pushed into March of something then.
Okay. Let's see, I did have meetings with SACOG, PCTPA, and Air Pollution Control. I do not have anything of specific interest for the city tonight for any of those committees. So I will go ahead and conclude my committee reports and say what I have for good of the order. Wes?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just want to build on the statement earlier about the application into Cal OES. Staff had submitted a second application in under the funding availability for home hardening. The application, as we're still discussing with them, whether or not they're going to approve the notice of intent to move forward. They're actually, I think, kind of encouraging us to increase the amount we asked for $1.5 million. Which sounds great, but with both of these grant opportunities, there is a 25% match to that amount.
Mm-hmm.
So $1.5 million, that's $375,000 after.
Yep.
So I'm a little leery about expanding that unless council wants to consider offering funding to the community for those programs. But again, we'll be bringing that back later.
Thank you.
That's all
I have comments on that, but I'll save them for when it's on the agenda. All right. Well, thank you, Wes. We do not have any council business this evening, so we are now moving to the good of the order. Sean, do you have anything for good of the order?
No, nothing for tonight. Thanks.
Okay, Joe?
I just wanted to tell all the people that have helped during this snow emergency we have, just what a absolutely super job everybody did. I mean, it's like, I ended up driving about 500 miles, taking food around to people and trying to check on people and stuff. But it was like, everybody we talked to was out there helping. It's like, we just saw like the best of the best doing stuff. So I just wanted to say thank you again to everybody.
Thanks, Joe. David, do you have anything?
Joe took my thunder. I just want to echo that. And again, just the fact that like, it wasn't just one agency, but multiple agencies, like it's a simple fact, which is the wellness checks, like believe it or not, that was cool to see that it just wasn't one agency. I mean, there's multiple agencies that like got out there to the elderly. I had a couple neighbors as well, and it was just cool to see that you guys found time to like check on them as well. So thank you.
Thank you, David. Marnie?
I just want to say thank you to everybody for the effort in the winter storm.
Right. Yeah, I'm going to echo that as well. And I'm just going to throw in, I want to say another huge thank you to all of our volunteers. All of our emergency response crews were busy as bees, doing their jobs. And we had an outstanding number of volunteers that for 2 weeks straight, cooked 3 meals a day and, made sure that people had a nice warm place to hang out, charge their devices and, have a little bit of normalcy. And, so big thank you to our veterans and especially the American Legion who, spearheaded that. Yep. I did also want to mention that PG&E will be mobilizing their mobile command unit for on March 10th. I believe we're going to do 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. And the intent is to have the mobile command unit there with collaboration from the city, the county, and Nevada County, so that, folks from the river fire can seek resources as far as rebuild, how to get your power back on. We had a lot of people who were running on massive generators for an extended period of time following the river fire. We need to get service restored to you guys. And the best way to do that is, we're going to want you to reach out to the Building and Renovation Service Center, but a lot of folks don't know how to navigate that process. So to make that easy, PG&E and again, both counties are going to be coming together at the Sierra Vista Community Center on March 10th. That's a Thursday. I am aware that a lot of people will probably be working during those hours. And if that is a major inconvenience to you, feel free to reach out to me directly and I will get you in contact with the right people to make sure that you can get your questions answered and your needs met. With that being said, I do not have anything else for the good of the order this evening, unless anyone else has any finishing thoughts. I will go ahead and adjourn the meeting. Thank you.